It is Lolicon Pride Month, people, and I don't know necessarily why we haven't done a lot of Lolicon videos yet this month. So, still kind of coming to terms with that. And it's a bit weird. How come every April when this month happens, I don't necessarily post anything that's super duper lolly and like have a bunch of it going on. It's just a bit weird. Granted, I'm a weird person. If you didn't know that, I'm more weirded out about you than me. But anyway, when it comes down to things, today is a more specific day of learning because that's essentially what's going to happen today. So I was just thinking, what topic of lolly can we really talk about? Because I talked about literally everything, and there's not necessarily anything that really needs my attention, or at least something I can think of that will be worth you watching. And then it hit me, Oppai Loli. And I'll be perfectly honest, we talked about it before, especially after watching Aiken, or I like to call it Aiken, even though it's not pronounced correctly, but screw you. But when it comes down to things, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the Oppai Loli and how it's kind of rare and stuff like that, but more so to define it, mainly because I feel like we don't have an actual definition of Oppai Loli. We know it's a concept, we know it exists in a few different forms, even though it's a rarity, but still it does exist nonetheless. And when it comes down to things, especially with people trying to be so fast and be like, oh, that's not a lolly, or that's not an Oppai Loli, whatever, that's a short stack. And then you have all these other terminologies and stuff, and I kind of want to just clear the air of lolly in general and just make a definitive video about what the term is, what it represents, and everything goes for it, you know? So that's kind of what I want to do. So when it comes down to things, let's start off with lolly, and let's just get the big part of it out the way. Legal lolly, teen lolly, short stack. Let's be perfectly honest, when it all regards to lolly, those terms are dumb and they shouldn't even be a thing. I'm gonna be very honest with you. There is no such thing as a teen lolly. There's no such thing as a legal lolly. There's no such thing as a lolly that you refer to as a short stack that has a massive jugs. There is no such thing. It is either only lolly or Oppai Loli. Get used to it, because I'm gonna be very honest with you. The whole thing about lolly, and this is the definitive ultimate term when it comes down to it, lolly is about the body type of the person. If they have underdeveloped chest or not so developed ass and basically be short, they are considered lolly. There is no excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. That is what it is, and it's super a double down thing if the creator go out their way to explicitly say that they are one, or they use them and make them ass like a lolly and stuff like that, you know? It's just not that hard to figure out, people. It's literally not. If the literal person has that small petite like body type, and if the creator of the show or the show itself calls it out specifically to call a character a lolly, then it is what it is. You cannot change that. I don't care what you say, you cannot change that. So what the actual hell is Oppai Loli? That is probably the biggest thing, because there, by all intents and purposes, there is no actual definition on the internet. There is actually no proper source where you can look it up to figure it out. There is basically nothing. We're basically on the bare bones of things. And there's technically not anything in the anime industry as of late that has a definition or something of the sort that we can make inferences to kind of understand it a bit better. So if we're going to be honest, we're going to have to figure this out ourselves, which I personally think, when it comes down to things, Oppai Loli has to come to either one or two things. It's either going to be the age of the character. Yes, for the first time, lolly is actually going to mean something with the age where it comes to Oppai. And then it means, and I think it's going to come down to what the creator decides on what the character is. And I think that's what it's going to really be. And what the, you know, kind of the world, and maybe on a third level where the character is, like how the world is with the character and stuff, and how it's kind of, you know, built around it. So that's kind of how it's might be defined as, if I'm being perfectly honest, because there is some Oppai Lolis that is easy to understand. There is some that is very weird and kind of breaks the rules of what it is and changes things up, and it makes it hard to kind of identify it, honestly. So when it comes down to things, let's start out easy with Aiken. Y'all know Komoe, right? Y'all remember that girl, the girl that actually has a huge freaking jug? When it comes to her world and her anime, she's 11 years old and she's in 6th grade. What helps there is that it defines the age of the character, but also, even more so, to make sure you don't get it twisted or anything, degrade that character as well. Now, that was something that didn't necessarily need to be there because the age was already enough, but the fact that they hammered it in, like, they're still learning in school and whatever, that still makes it, like, even better. That makes it like, oh, we can actually fully understand this a lot more. And that's actually really damn good. So that can honestly tell you that, yeah, that's an actual Oppai Loli. And the reason why I say the age matters this time is mainly because if you look at this character, majority of people will say short stack, even though they're dumb, but they will say short stack, which is annoying as hell. So you need a definitive idea of why this is still a loli, And so the thing that will closely grab to it, if you can't necessarily say the body type anymore, it would be the age. And how the character is basically kind of treated and how they kind of are and stuff. So that's basically kind of how that would kind of go, So Komoe, without a doubt, without any type of weird type of ideas of what people might think, that is a Oppai Loli. That is no short stack. There is no impossible way you can get that wrong. So when you think about it, okay, then that's pretty much easy then. But not necessarily, because people will flip out, and the problem with this is that so many people keep trying to have these different terms and ways of how they want to identify a character, to the point is like, but what's the actual definition of it, or like how do we actually identify it? And honestly, it is somewhat hard, but it's not that hard, and it's mainly the only reason why it's kind of hard is because how people kind of perceive certain characters, like Yuzaki or something, Let's start off with Yuzaki. Yuzaki does look short, but that's because she is short. That, if anything, I would say Yuzaki is actually like a legitimate short stack, mainly because she is over the age of 18. She goes to freaking college, so anybody that says that was a child is absolutely dumb. So I don't necessarily how you misunderstand what the hell goes on there. So when it comes down to things, I mean, yeah, the show slightly somewhat treats her as a kid, but majority of the time you see her doing like more adult actions and more adult things and stuff like that. So like drinking and doing things of that nature. So it's not necessarily to say, so you can't necessarily call her an Oppai Loli, because that doesn't necessarily make sense, especially when the anime specifically tells you or gives you or implies information that she's not exactly a loli in any shape or form. So where you get that from, I don't necessarily know. Then you have people like Hestia, who considers themselves to be a Oppai Loli themselves. That's when things start getting a bit crazy, because you can't necessarily look at age anymore, because Hestia is old as shit. So how do we define this? Through the anime itself, and basically what the character implies themselves to be. So if the character says that they are an Oppai Loli and everything else kind of fits the bill, and that's what the anime want them to be, then they are that of an Oppai Loli. That's essentially what they're going to be, And again, it does get, and like I said before, it might be a little bit hard to tell, but as I said before, if the age of the character is specifically stated, and if it fits the bill, or if the character is treated like that, or in the show is just basically straight up saying that this is what this character is, there is no different way about it, then I would say, yeah, that's an Oppai Loli, and that's kind of how it is. Then the biggest one I feel like a lot of people were super angry about, and honestly I would say this is more of a loli than short stack, Illalu from Dragon Maid. So many people were so mad that they had a whole ass mental breakdown, if you remember, about Illalu the first damn time when they saw her. So many people were so mad, just to beyond the point, where Illalu was like a thing, and then people were just not accepting it to the point they had to redraw her or do other stuff with her, just to be like, that's not a loli, that's a short stack. And to be perfectly honest, with how everybody was considering her to be a loli and didn't like that, I would definitely just lean on it just to say that she is a loli. But let's look at the details and stuff. Now, in Dragon Maid, why am I so more leaning towards Illalu being a loli? Well, or at least an Oppai Loli. There's a few reasons for this. One, the show itself, because Kana be running her legs up on old girl for some reason, and they be having some moments out of that, and just extra other moments. Then you also have Shota, who hangs with Lolicon all the time, who is an 11-year-old boy, but at the same time deals with this fine-ass, thick-ass dragon lady, who most likely would like to do some lewd things if she actually knew what she was pretty much doing half the time. But majority of the time I'm going to assume she doesn't. But when it comes down to things, don't be acting like there ain't nothing going on in this reality of this anime, because there totally is stuff that does happen. While Kana is older by age, she is still classified to be a loli character because that's how the show treats her, and that's kind of how she basically treats herself. And when it comes down to Shota is still, a boy because of the age that is specifically given to them. And when it comes down to things, it's also just the fact that, the name Shota too means like a younger boy as well in anime, so that kind of fits the bill. That's kind of like a poking at the name type of thing, honestly, making fun of it in a way. So that's kind of one thing you have to think about as well. So when it comes to Ilulu herself, she often calls herself 16, even though we pretty much can just guess that she's way older than that because she's a dragon too. And when it comes down to things, the reason why she has giant beanbag ass boobies is mainly because she stores fire in those. So that's also another reason. But again, you're probably wondering, this doesn't necessarily still classify her as an Oppai Loli. Well, where do you come up with this? The way she kind of behaves in the show, it's kind of somewhat similar to Kana in a weird way. Yeah, she might be a little bit more understanding how things kind of work and maybe just a little bit more mature, but she still kind of flows like a child in a way, and the show doesn't necessarily hide that too much. So even though she does look older and she has more of a creative figure, that doesn't necessarily mean that she isn't on par with like a loli character, And to be perfectly honest, she still is underage regardless whether she's 16 or not, whether you want to call this a teen loli or not, which the term again does not necessarily exist. Still, I would kind of more classify her as a Oppai Loli. She has a big rack, but she's short as hell. She also, acts like a kid too in some shape and form. And she kind of doesn't know too much about the world, so again, it kind of goes back to that kid-like idea that she could be kind of close to Kana as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to call her more of an Oppai Loli than a short stack. There's, again, not really a definitive ass way of looking at things, but this is probably the closest way we're going to be able to, of how we're going to identify certain Oppai Loli characters. There's not a lot of them in anime, but there is a fair few of them. It's rare, but there is a fair few that does exist. Because if we compare Yuzaki to Ilulu, Yuzaki, while she is dumb and have dumb moments, she still is, smart. She actually has an idea of how certain things is. Even if she doesn't necessarily be smart with her decisions sometimes, she does know how certain things is and how certain things work. She is at a college level of a human being, so she has some idea of how things work, Ilulu doesn't. She's basically like a little kid running around in the world that no one knows about. And that's essentially what is kind of happening here. So again, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that she's an Oppai Loli. And that's the fact that, and again, as I said before, the whole world is kind of fine with that concept. So I would classify her as an Oppai Loli and kind of end the story there. That's just personally how I think. And even though there's not a lot of Oppai Loli characters in anime, as they should have some, when it comes down to things, that doesn't necessarily mean it can't happen. There has been shows where there has been an Oppai Loli character, or at least they faked it out to be one. It can be done, it's just whether or not our people are going to just allow that to be the case, and probably not, considering the fact that we haven't really seen a lot of creators make those type of characters. Again, they can be a thing, but it just kind of depends on who is making the show and what kind of happens, So that's kind of is what it is when it comes down to things. Oppai Loli is a thing that can exist, just doesn't be utilized a lot, which kind of is a shame because I would kind of like just to see the chaos on people. But when it comes down to things, that's basically all I really wanted to say for this one. Kind of just wanted to define a term and basically kind of put the record out there that, Ilulu and Hestia and Komoe and things of that sort are Oppai Lolis. They're not no illegal loli, they're not no, short stack. They're not no teen Loli. They're just only is Loli and Oppai Loli, and that's it. So when it comes down to things, if you want to get mad about it, then be mad at yourself for making a dumbass concept and try to justify something that you already full-blown know well what it is. But anyway, that's basically all I really want to say for this one, so hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on Twitter and like it on this channel, Patreon as well. And throwing gifts. By the way, we did get a donation on the computer, so you know that can be a thing. So if you want to donate to the computer as well, throwing gifts is also like in the description. So check that out, please, if you would like to. Until then, it's your boy Jay, signing off. Have a blessed day.